Stop podcast.
So we are quite lucky. We've got, I suppose, the secret behind FDP's success this year, really, if we're going to be completely honest. We've managed to bag an absolute ledge in Callum Marks, the main man at Listing Dog Media. How are you?
I'm good. That's the best intro I've ever had.
Honestly,
I'll just snip that bit up and stick it on my LinkedIn.
That's your highlight reel sorted.
Yeah.
There you go. No, thank you for joining us today, mate. How are you?
I'm all good. Yeah, how are you two?
Yeah, not
thank
too bad.
Good,
Busy
good.
for a Monday, isn't it?
Yeah, always is, isn't it?
The sun is shining.
like it.
Let's make the most of it. What's it like up your way, Callum?
Yeah, well, so I'm in Manchester, so when the sun comes out, it's a rare thing. Where I am at the moment, basically at the front of my house, and it's essentially about a bit of a greenhouse at this time of the day. So the sun's like beating in. So yeah,
Make the most of it.
as this interview goes on, I'll be getting sweatier and sweatier. Apologies if you're watching this.
Hopefully, if we can do an edit at some point, we'll just zoom in on Callum for a little while, then zoom
Yeah,
back
just
out.
a
forehead,
sweat bead
yeah.
going down.
I guess for the guests, the listeners, and the viewers, if you can just give a little bit of an intro to yourself.
Yeah, so I run a podcast production company called Listening Dog Media. So we do a lot of various podcasts in the music space, done a lot in news. We've done a lot in comedy and parenting, but predominantly sports and football, more pressingly.
Amazing. And is there any sort of podcasts that people may know about?
Yeah, so probably the biggest one is our Seaman Says podcast with David Seaman. So yeah, that's probably the premier one that we do, which is always good fun. So it takes up a lot of our week.
I can imagine. What's that one? What's that like? Well, actually, no. Let's go back to the beginning of that. How did that all come about?
So basically, when we first launched, we launched in 2019, and we did a football podcast with another footballer who I won't say who, but I mean, you two know, but I won't go into too much detail about who and what that was. But we had some good success with it to start off with. So we had some really good guests. We had so our first episode with that one was Jurgen Klopp. It was literally just after Liverpool had won the Champions League. And then, yeah, we had Neville, Carragher, Lineker. So some good names on it. And then, that podcast came to an end. But we saw what potential football podcasts had. So we were basically looking around and thinking, right, what sort of footballers are there that have got good profile, are as universally liked as you can get, preferably in England international, but aren't one of the ones that are on the TV every weekend. And one of the people that we landed on was David Seaman. So reached out, and that was it. We reached out before COVID. Then the world ended, and so basically we did a pilot for it, and then said, right, cheers, David. We'll be in touch when it all gets going. And then 18 months later, we finally started. So yeah,
crazy.
Wow.
And is your background, has that always been in producing podcasts?
not podcasts. So I started off in radio. So when I was 16, I did an apprenticeship at so the group was owned by The Guardian, and then one of the stations on there was Smooth Radio. So I did an apprenticeship there, and then basically because the radio industry has always been a little bit how best do we describe it? Flimsy, should we say? So I joined at the point where it's flimsiest and was about to collapse. So essentially, I joined GMG, the group was called. And then Global came in and bought the group. So Global owned Capital, Heart, stations like that, XFM at the time. And then, so basically I was just doing any job that I could to sort of stay employed, essentially. So I finished my apprenticeship, and then I went doing some work for them where I was just on reception for a few hours a day. And then there was one point where I was in sales, and it got to a point where my job title was something ridiculous. I think it was programming / admin / finance assistant. So if ever there's a title where it's like, we don't really know what to do with you, but we quite like having you around.
You're kind of like the James Milner.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then went from there. Knew I wanted to produce. So I did little bits whilst I was there, but there wasn't the opportunities. Fast forward a little bit, left, went freelancing. Joined a station up here called Key 103, which is now Hits Radio. Freelance there, got offered a job there, did that for a bit, and then that station changed. So I was basically up for redundancy, and essentially I had the choice of can either fight it or I can bugger off and try and make it on my own. So I thought, well, everyone else is going to be in this boat in a couple of years anyway, so I'll get ahead of them. And did that. And then the boss that made me redundant 6 months later came to me and said, I'm leaving as well. I'm going to start a production company. Do you want in? And then that's it. So essentially I'm here because everywhere else I've been the kiss of death. So yeah.
Yeah.
This is the longest commitment I've ever had.
So that was the start of Listening Dog Media.
That was it, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, so if any radio execs are listening to this, if you fancy killing your station, I'm your man.
We'll put the links to all his social media. Right, that's amazing. I love that. So, what was kind of the biggest kind of, I guess, lesson for you, or sort of way that you learnt the most in those roles to kind of get you to where you are now?
I always say this, and I think I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, basically. So I can, which is quite handy in podcasting, as you two know. It's quite good to be able to do lots of different things, and sort of have an idea of how lots of different things work and how to pull it together and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, because I've had like all the different roles and like, so I understand the admin side of it. I understand like the front of mic stuff, the behind the mic stuff. And I've got a little bit of understanding about sales because I spent a little bit of time in sales. And then also working at different, like catering to different audiences as well, because so like during that time that I was in radio, I was working on, so I worked on, like I said, started at Smooth, which is one audience. Then I've done some stuff on Heart, did some stuff on Capital, Absolute. And so it's all different audiences. So you can sort of figure out how to cater content to different demographics, really. So that's probably the biggest thing, I'd say.
I mean, it sounds like obviously you learnt quite a lot. Was it something that you sort of knew early doors that you wanted to go into that sort of media side and, broaden it all?
Absolutely not. No, it was complete fluke. So essentially, when I was at school, I remember sitting in my last GCSE exam, which was science, and thinking, I'm never sitting another exam ever again. And so I started at college and I lasted 3 days because, it was just, when you just get a vibe and it was just like, it just isn't for me. And I'd been working at the local gym and stuff like that. And I'd always been putting on like live events and stuff at school, like little charity gigs and stuff like that. So then I left to go and I got a job at an events company. And then I was like, that ended up to be like cold calling. So I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. And I was just thought I'll browse on the apprenticeships website, and then saw this one to work at a radio station and thought, that sounds quite fun. And then end up getting that. And then that's been it. So yeah, total accident. Yeah.
I think they're sort of the best way to go. I don't think when I ever thought of getting into sort of HR and recruitment initially. I mean, Will, you may correct me if I'm wrong there. I don't know whether you aspire to be the G in HR that you are now.
Sorry, it froze. I didn't
just saying about HR, sorry. But yeah, did you ever think that you wanted to be in HR? Was that like?
Did I ever think I wanted to be in HR? No, yeah. I kind of fell into it. Yeah, you just sort of go. I think similar to Callum actually. I don't want to do any more exams, and now I'm like debating whether to do like the next level up in qualifications, and I'm like, I don't think I want to do that because I can't be bothered with the long drawn out process. But yeah, I might do it
if it helps you in the long run. I suppose it's worth it.
Exactly. Yeah, I won't get any more qualifications in internet connection as it's dodgy today.
No, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Callum, let's talk about some of the other podcasts before we talk about your main one then. Because obviously that's the one that Will and I are going to have. I know we've got a personal interest because of the main man that it's all about, of course. But you said you do sort of comedy podcasts, you do some sort of parenting podcasts as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Yeah, so I mean, the parenting one was the first one that we ever did. So it was actually sort of like the genesis of the company. It was with the radio presenter that I worked with at one of the radio stations. And then one of the other presenters on the stations was, do you know Cherie Murphy? So she's Harry Kewell's wife.
I'm going to sound like I'm about 90, but wasn't she in Emmerdale back in the day? She
was. Yeah. So basically, yeah, we had this idea. Well, Kelly, the presenter, had an idea for a podcast, and I'd done a podcast before and sold it. And she said, "Oh, would you, like to help me out with that?" So we did that, and then that did really well for us. Worked with some quite good brands. I know you're a new dad, Ben. So like one of the sponsors we had was Kender Mill.
Nice, amazing.
Which was which was quite good. Yeah, it was quite a fun podcast. It was all about parenting and what like the tough part of being a mum. I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds of that sort of podcast now, but this was like when we first started, it was one of the very few. And yeah, in fact, with that podcast, we had that, and then our other football podcast, which I alluded to earlier on. They were like the first two podcasts, and we had this surreal moment about 6 months into the start of the company, where we were sat in Hotel Football up here in Manchester interviewing Gary Neville, and so Cherie had gone on, I think it was Lorraine or This Morning or something, talking about the podcast, and as we were sat there, we had the number one podcast in sport, the football one that we were recording, and then the number one podcast in parenting at that same time. So never done it since, but I know that's peaked too soon. But yeah, so that was good. We had some good guests on that. We had trying to think of some of them now. That I mean, COVID we did really well because everyone was locked in the house, and so we basically had lots of celebrity friends that we were able to call up and say, "You're a bit bored. Can you help us out?" Yeah, we did one with Keith Lemon and his mum.
Oh, amazing! How was that?
But we essentially spent an hour and a half trying to get his mum on Zoom. So at one point, once we actually eventually got her on, we did the interview and was chatting about what was Keith like as a boy and everything, and then I said, "Right, thanks for your time. See you later." And she just stood up and walked away without turning it off, and we were all there shouting, going, "Come back!"
Oh, that is incredible. I just love it. It's, whenever you hit a certain age, that's it, isn't it? It's game over.
Yeah,
is it?
So,
do you know what? I wasn't even going to dig you out because I did this a few weeks ago. Obviously, Riverside, I guess just for the listeners and viewers. So Callum introduced us to Riverside, and it's changed our game, I think. I think we're a lot better now, or hopefully. But we sometimes have difficulty connecting and things like that and recording. We've live streamed a couple of times accidentally. So, yeah, it's not been the best. And, yeah, connections. We've had a few guests that haven't been able to come on before. No, we had a few issues with Guy, didn't we?
Yeah.
He couldn't get on for a while, so we had to reschedule that for like 3-4 weeks later than we hoped for and things. It's been a little bit difficult from that side. So it's clearly an age thing. It must be. But never mind. What was it like was it a sort of pinch yourself moment when you had the number one parenting pod, number one football pod? You're just sat there, in front of Gary Neville, just chilling, chatting. Like,
it was mad. So I mean, yeah, I'm sure we'll get onto this in a bit, but I'm a United fan, so yeah, sitting there and he's like, Anyway, we'll move on. But obviously he was talking about like he's saying, I'd knock Old Trafford down. Obviously this was about 2018, 2019 it was.
Yeah.
And he was saying, I'd knock Old Trafford down, or I'd sell the naming rights to it and make this a Manchester United world, which is effectively what's kind of been announced, obviously, in the past couple of months. But yeah, so that I remember sitting there going, this is absolutely mental what's happening here. So yeah, especially like being, we literally, I think we launched in the February, and this would have been like the September or something. This was happening.
That's such a quick start, isn't it? To get in.
Yeah,
starting up a business, on a whim, and then all of a sudden you're sitting in front of Gary Neville with 2 successful podcasts.
Yeah. No, it was bizarre. So yeah, I think the same day we did. I think we did Emil Heskey the same day as well. So it's kind of like, it's
big name.
Just sat there like, bloody hell, this is mental.
And what is it? So what part do you play in the podcast? Are you the interviewer, or are you like the producer? What are you doing?
Just the producer. So I'll be quite frank. My skin isn't thick enough to be a presenter. So if I see something that someone tweets something about me or leave a comment about me, that'll be my week ruined.
Yeah. Will knows that well from TikTok.
So I've got a policy of staying quiet, basically. Obviously not doing that well on this, but I tend to very rarely make an appearance on things.
Yeah. And so as a producer then, what's your main goal? What's your main objective? What are you doing?
So it's difficult. It's like different with different podcasts. So I always, work with different presenters, you're sort of working out how best to complement them. It's like understand what different presenter needs. So some will be more accomplished than others. Yeah, so it'll be more so like thinking about what can I give this presenter to get the best out of this episode. And so there'll be some podcasts where there's quite a lot of pre-preparation go into it. So like, for example, with Seaman Says, I'll sit there on a Sunday night, plan the episodes for that week, ready for the recording the next day. Whereas then like with our How to DJ podcast, which we do with Chris Hawkins from Six Music, Chris does pretty much all that himself. Well, I say pretty much, he does all that himself. And then it's basically just a case of, for us, like just making sure Chris is comfortable in the recordings, making sure it's all set up technically for him, and then we'll take it away and make sure it's all shiny afterwards. And even things like managing the sponsors and stuff like that and making sure they're happy. So yeah, there's a lot, basically, the role of a producer, but it can split out into many different areas. So you can have like a researcher, you can have a show producer, you can have an editor, you can have someone who just does like social media clips. But yeah, I'll tend to do a lot and to do it all really where I can.
Christ, that sounds like you're constantly busy.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know there'll be a few tips and tricks that you've obviously learned over the years and stuff. But is there anything, I guess if anyone's kind of like a bit of a budding producer or anything like that, any tips for someone to be able to get into that to make their life a bit easier?
It's just experimenting is the main thing. So like there's so much where I've learned that has done well on one podcast that we've gone, right, I'll tell you what, let's go and do it. Let's go and try this on another podcast. I know obviously I've shared some of those ideas with you guys as well, things that's worked for us, and it's just trial and error, basically, see what works. But yeah, it's just, I think the main thing is just being a decent person, because yeah, like I said, the major thing is making sure you're on the side of the presenter, making sure they're comfortable and feel happy enough to sort of work with you, and then they also feel quite. I think if you're an arse, basically, if the presenter wants to change something, they're less likely to come to you and suggest something. Whereas it can be a bit more of a collaboration if you're a bit more open and friendly.
So I guess sum up. So don't be a dick. Is that what you're trying to say, Callum?
That's essentially it. Yeah, there's the episode title.
There we go, sorted. If you could just sort out the SEO, that'd be great for us.
Yeah,
we'll go viral on this now. Okay, so if we could just start talking about the Seaman Says pod then, if you don't mind. I listen to it, reasonably regularly. I've been quite bad this season, I must admit. Obviously, this season you kind of change up the format. It's all very much in person now.
Yeah.
Obviously, lots of studio guests and things like that, different partners. Just tell us a little bit about like how you manage all the guests and stuff. I know you told us obviously a little bit beforehand. But how difficult is that? Because obviously you've got sort of strict guidelines and stuff, haven't you now, especially with this season?
Yeah,
in terms of like what the sponsors wanted, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's dependent on. So our sponsors are Betway, with its obviously front of shirt sponsor for West Ham and the betting partner for a lot of people. So they're absolutely fine. We don't have any issues in terms of like what guests we can or can't book or anything like that. The only difficulty we may have is whether they're able to promote it as much, because obviously some players have a younger audience, so obviously there being a gambling brand, you can't really necessarily have that. But it also gives us like incredible access to, and obviously with David's contact books and stuff like that. So I'll be on, like, in terms of the actual booking of guests, a lot of that comes from David himself, and or at least and David or his agent Matt will basically just reach into their little black books and say, right, let's go and get so and so. But yeah, over the past few years, we've been really lucky to have some like incredible guests on. So just not even in the world of football, like we've had Robbie Williams has been on a couple of times. Matt Lucas has been on because obviously he's a big Arsenal fan. Tom Hiddleston was another one that we had on, which was great. Ollie Murs we had on this year. Ramesh has been on, and then obviously you get all the ex-Arsenal legends. So we've been lucky enough to, not this season but last season, we started off with Henry, and then we had Wenger, and then we had Bergkamp, like one month after another, which is obviously which is insane. And then this season we've switched it up a little bit. So previous seasons we've been doing it like you guys are on Riverside, and everyone's been joining. But then since then we've moved it in. Sorry. So since then we've moved it in person and in studio. So that obviously comes with its own challenges. We've got studio in Berkshire that we use, but obviously getting people there and a set time is much more difficult than saying, can you jump on, just click this link and we'll chat to you in 5 minutes. So yeah, we've been quite lucky in terms of the guests. It's just really fun podcast to work on, chatting football every week. So it's nothing to complain about.
It does seem like it when you listen to it. So like listening to the Lee Dixon one that I think that's the latest sort of 2 episodes have been Lee Dixon, and you can just tell that you're just having fun, and obviously it helps them to being kind of best mates, as they said. But the camaraderie that you must get from him and his mates, it just must just instantly be there.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that we wanted to do a work with an ex-pro, really, rather than doing a journalist podcast. Because you sit a footballer down in front of a journalist, and you'll get stonewalled. Basically, you'll get very stock answers, and they're all very the guards up. Whereas because they're sort of, obviously Dave is one of their peers, and he's someone that's done it at the highest of levels, and he's been very successful as well. And he's one of those iconic. I think if you said to someone, name me an English goalkeeper, a lot of the time people would say David Seaman.
We definitely would.
Yeah.
Yeah, a million percent we would, yeah.
So obviously when people come in, I mean, it's really funny to see people like the celebs come in and like they'll be all like jelly-legged around him and everything. It's really funny. It's just a completely different thing when people are talking when it's footballer to footballer rather than footballer to journalist.
Have you got a favourite guest? Oh, sorry.
Ooh, do I have a favourite guest? Don't know, actually. That's a good question. I'll tell you who. I'll tell you rather than favourite. I'll tell you who's been the most surprising, because we've had like the likes of Gaza on and things like that, and you're always going to get like the
of course, the
typical Gaza stories and everything. But at the start of the season, we had Phil Jagielka on, and he was really surprising. Like I don't really know much about him beforehand. Like he's always been one of them names where he's been around for ages as a good professional, but he's never someone that's really been out there and like pushed himself in front of the media and that kind of thing. And then so we booked him, and then he came in, and he was great. He was really knowledgeable, really funny, and I think I would be amazed if we don't see him do more punditry over the coming years. He was really good. So yeah, but then, like we've had, like I said, we had Ramesh on a few. I think in January this year, and he was hilarious as well. But yeah, you do have these pinch me moments where you're sat there on, I'm just sat in my house basically, and I'm on a call with Robbie Williams.
That's insane.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
stuff
insane.
like that is probably the highlights, I'd say.
Is there anyone, excuse me, any sort of guest that you've?
I tell you what,
really hit you. Oh, go on.
Something that's just come into my head. So when we first, sorry, this is going to make a really difficult edit for you now, but anyway.
We're not that professional. It's okay.
When we first started, it was only literally a couple of months in, and David said, "Oh, I've got Peter Schmeichel. He's going to come on." Obviously, being a United fan, I'm like, "Amazing! This is brilliant." And talking about the internet troubles that you've been having, David dropped off halfway through the interview. So basically, it was on this call. It was me, the other producer Adam, and then Peter Schmeichel, and that was it.
Oh my God.
So because we thought, well, he's on. It feels a bit odd just not to. You can't just leave him sat there. So I carried on, and you can hear it in the interview. So I was on it, and I asked him this question. You can hear in my voice how nervous I am. So Peter,
is this still live? Is this
I think so. Yeah, it'll be somewhere. I don't. I may have not put that bit into the the best ofs, should we say? But
you've got to find that clip for us.
It was when Solskjaer was the manager of United, and it was when, you might not remember, but there was a period where he was sort of rotating between De Gea and Dean Henderson. So I asked him about his thoughts on that, and as I was asking him, I was like, I'm asking Peter Schmeichel a question.
I love that. Joe, it's so nice because the amount of people we've had on that, spoken to ex-pros, and they're just like, no, they're just normal people.
Yeah.
I wasn't really nervous. It's really nice to hear the fact that you were genuinely like, oh my God, it's Peter Schmeichel.
I'll be honest, like the rest of them I can't really be asked about, but like...
I say, Will and we've had a few people on. I sort of fanboy, I think, more than Will does, but in real life, I think you're probably more shy than I am, aren't you, Will? I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think everybody can tell that. Oh, Bolshy Ben over there.
Just go and talk. I just get excited. I'm like a child. I can't help myself. It's like, oh my God, it's like when we met Clinton Morrison at a football game, charity game. I was like, oh, hi, I'm Ben. Nice to meet you. Honestly, it felt like verbal diarrhea. It was amazing. We got a picture of them, and it was brilliant fun. And Will was like, I can't believe we just done that. Like in the car the whole way home, just proper fanboying.
It gets easier though, doesn't it? The more people you meet, it does get easier to sort of then start just have a chat and like act like they're normal people, because that's exactly what they are.
Yeah, absolutely. So just sticking on your guest for a second, Callum. So is there any of your sort of celebrity guests that you've had on with David that have really fanboyed over him?
Yeah, Romesh was one of them. Matt Lucas, I think I remember, he was just like obviously they've all met David before, but he was just like, he wanted to get it perfect. So he was like, there was a point where we'd not started yet, and he was just carrying us around his house to make sure he had the perfect backdrop.
No,
and it's stuff like that.
Lovely.
Like, yeah, which is absolutely fine by us, but it's like, yeah, I mean, they are funny. Like they just like, they're like, yeah. When we had Tom Hiddleston on, like David and Tom have become quite friendly. Is when they go to games with each other and everything. But it's just like, yeah, it's like he's a big star, and he's just like really like geeky over his knowledge of Arsenal and everything.
Yeah. How close are you two? Are you quite close now
with David?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. So I'm a little bit more removed this season, just because obviously with me being up in Manchester, a commute to Berkshire every week isn't really ideal. So I basically, we split it between the two producers. So Adam, the other producer, goes and does the recording, and then I will sort of take on the stuff after that. Really, so essentially, so I'm not sat on the M6 for 8 hours a day. But yeah, no, like, yeah, we're in like WhatsApp groups together and stuff like that, and get a message we've got for meals and stuff like that. So which is it's all nice. It's it's bizarre to think. It's only when you step back and think, oh yeah, I'm like quite good, like friendly with David Seaman. Like I wouldn't have thought this when I was watching the World Cup on in primary school in 2002.
If we asked David the same question, what would he say?
Who?
Yeah. Can you kind of give us a little bit of insight to what David's like, I guess, as a person, off the pitch and things like that? Because as you said earlier, he comes across as one of the nicest people in the world. Even rival fans don't hate him. They all just say, no, it's David Seaman, he's bloody brilliant. Yeah, he's fantastic. He's a great goalie. He's like, he was world class. He just comes across as just such a lovely bloke.
Yeah, it's all a facade. It's no, honestly, he's exactly as you as he comes across. Like, just we like I said, we worked with a footballer previously, and like polar opposite compared to that. Like, just so easy to work with, doesn't kick up a fuss. It takes it really seriously. Good laugh, always involves you. So honestly, he's a really nice bloke.
Oh, I love that. It's always nice to see. Like, he's one of our, like, for me, I guess at least, he's one of those players that I just always remembered. Growing up watching him, obviously the tash and ponytail kind of made him iconic anyway, didn't it? But the fact that he was bloody good in goal as well.
Yeah, probably the biggest compliment I could give him is if you didn't know who he was, you would never think he was a footballer.
Okay, what do you mean by that exactly?
Like, so footballers have this perception of footballers where they're a little bit, probably it's more so probably modern day, but probably a little bit stuck up, probably a little bit. I'm going to put this, not the sharpest tool in the sheds. Like, they have that perception, don't they, where it's kind of like they're in a different world, where he's completely not like that at all. So he's great, really good.
Perfect. With the dynamic with him, when it first started, when the podcast first started, did it take a little while to sort of get into the rhythm with him? Was he a natural behind the microphone or anything? Because as you say, he doesn't do much media work generally. No,
and this is probably the most that he'd done, really. So he's a bit unsure. Like, I'll be honest, when I met with him at he was doing an event with Tony Adams up here. So I went and met him for a coffee because we'd been chatting about it, and he didn't really know what a podcast was, and
really,
a lot of people didn't at that point. It's like I said, it was pre-COVID that we first started speaking with him, so we didn't really know what it was. But he's obviously, when he's done stuff, he's been a guest, whereas what we wanted to do was make sure he was front and center. So it's stuff like getting him used to doing introductions, him asking the questions, and that kind of thing. So he is like, I wouldn't say he was a natural when he first started, but no one is as well. But he was great. I'll put it into context. The first interview that we ever did for the podcast was Gaza.
Wow.
So talking about, like going all in first one.
Jeez. How did that come about? Is that because of the friendship there? And it's just
yeah. So they're good friends. So it was so the first, basically we started. It was the Euros, the first Euros when England got to the final. That was the tournament that we launched with. Obviously, we thought, okay, let's go and get let's see if Gaza will do it. Like, he's probably the synonymous name with the England national team and that kind of thing. And so we did that. And but he's been great, really good. So he's much more confident with it and everything now. So he's brilliant.
Perfect.
Since you've been sort of working with him, is there a little part of you that started to fall in love with Arsenal? That's
a great question. I was just about to ask something very similar as well.
From a selfish point of view, if Arsenal do well, our figures tend to be better. So yes, I think it's good when Arsenal do well. Obviously, there's still a little bit of me like, I'm just a bit jealous. It'd be, I think, more so if my team were doing better. I'd probably be a little bit more like, oh, hang on, get back in your place. But no, because my team's terrible now, then I don't mind. Like it was funny. We went to the Palace game last week, all of us. And it was like, it was nice to see some decent football, even though it wasn't the greatest game. It was still better than watching my lot. But two, I cheered Arsenal goals. It's amazing, really. But I mean, I was in the Arsenal end as well. So if I jumped up when Palace scored.
Yeah, I think the podcast could be finished pretty quick after that.
It was one of them where, so obviously we had David Raya on the podcast a couple of months ago now, and so obviously he made the mistake, and I'm kind of like, well, it happens, doesn't it? Because before I'd probably like, look at that. What's he doing?
I just want to touch on the David Raya stuff quickly, actually, because I completely forgot he was on. I remember you saying about it. I listened to it as well. Bloody brilliant. It was so insightful. But what was it like meeting him? Because David's obviously quite a big fan of Raya as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'd had Aaron on a couple of times in previous seasons. So, David obviously goes into the club pretty much every week, I think, to work with some of the younger goalkeepers. So he said to him, "Oh, would you be up for coming on?" So he did, and he was great. And the good thing is we didn't do it via the club, so it didn't become a club thing. So he's able to be a bit more open and honest and everything. So we were quite good to be able to ask him about like which he'd rather win, the Premier League or the Champions League. And he opted for the Champions League, which is obviously good now. The best bit was hearing his sort of his Spanish/Lancashire accent. Which was just there was something he said something. He said so. He played at Blackburn, didn't he? It was Blackburn, wasn't it, when he first?
Yeah, it's Blackburn. Wasn't he? He went on loan to Stockport, I think, didn't he, for a couple of months, I think, or something like that as well. So,
But he said, "Oh yeah, I used to." So I was in and around the young uns. I was like, young uns.
There's a few things he sort of has that twang, and I thought that sounds really odd.
Yeah.
Really it's like Hector Bellerin.
He
like
basically
his accent.
Yeah, he obviously it was his first move over here, so he learned English from Blackburn. But,
obviously, we're not going to belittle anyone from Blackburn area in case you are avid listeners of the podcast. But there's perceptions. Brilliant. But was he quite insightful as well? Then he was actually
it was really good. Yeah, really
up for it.
Yeah, really good. He just turned up on his own. Just after training, like no one with him. Just did it at a hotel near the training ground. He turned up on his own, sat down. We were a little bit delayed, but he's just chatting. He was great, really good, nice guy. Shook everyone's hand in the room. Thanked everyone afterwards.
Amazing.
So really nice. Really nice guy. Which is why I was a bit sorry for him when he made that mistake at the last week. So anyway.
So frustrating.
Yeah, just a little bit. Sorry, I thought you were going to say something.
No, sorry.
So just on the guest side, quickly, before we will move on to your favourite team before we close, we have to talk about it, Callum. You don't have a choice, unfortunately, unless you just end up randomly disconnecting.
Yeah, my internet's gone.
Bad internet connection.
Yeah.
You sort of touched on, obviously, like with David Raya, for example, it wasn't via the club or anything. Do they sort of have? I assume there's obviously restrictions to a certain degree, but does that limit quite a lot of the sort of potential content you can talk about on the podcasts?
If we do it via a club, it can be, because obviously they want the final say. They want to make sure that whoever's speaking is saying stuff representative of the club.
Okay.
So, I mean, bit of a, we may have announced it by the time this goes out, but we may not. So, but we've done an interview last week with a couple of the West Ham players. So that will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. But obviously that's slightly different but we did that at West Ham. So we did it at Rush Green last week. So that is a little bit more different. There was someone from the club there. There's oversight over the questions and stuff like that, which we try not to do with other guests. And we try and just make sure it's a natural conversation. So we'll prepare the questions, but we don't necessarily share them with the guests, otherwise you can tend to get stock answers, or at least rehearsed answers from it. So but yeah, so with the club ones it's slightly different, because it can be difficult, should we say.
That's completely fair enough. Yeah, I understand that. So let's talk about United for just a few minutes, Callum. I promise we won't drag it out. Obviously, where you've obviously got a few connections and things now, obviously throughout your career. What's your sort of thought process on what's happened at United? I guess, is Amorim the right person as well?
Yeah, but I also thought that about Ten Hag. So
okay,
I think at every point you think, oh yeah, this is a good appointment when it first happens. I think every club is like that as well. I don't think any club looks at a manager and goes, this is going to be a terrible.
Yeah, this is a car crash.
Yeah, unless you're Spurs. But
so let's not comment on that, because this could be a really long episode.
But yeah, no, I think it's just years of mismanagement. I don't think the players they've been buying don't know if good enough is the word. I think they've gone into an environment where they are built up to such a thing. And I also think that there's too many bad characters in there. So when good ones come in, they sort of get drowned out with it as well. So, and I always think that you guys coming from like a HR recruitment point of view, you kind of want to hire people all of the same sort of mindset, don't you? So if you hire too many negative people, you can have a negative.
Yeah, they've got to fit your core values. And I think it was it on the overlap that they had Ratcliffe on with Neville.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Will told me about this, the whole interview and stuff. You know, they've come away from what the cultures are of the club. Yeah. And especially what Sir Alex obviously instilled for, was it 20 odd years, 25 years, like he was at the club. How far or how long does it take to get that back, do you think?
A long time.
Or to get at least some sort of new values in and get rid of that toxic culture.
The problem that I find with it is that there's all this talk of saying, oh yeah, United, I mean, they've got this ridiculous aim of winning the league in the next, I think it's by 2028, isn't it? Which obviously isn't going to happen, but they're kind of like disregarding other teams. So they're like, oh yeah, well, United will be better in like 3 or 4 years, so they'll win the league then. But it's like, well, City are probably going to be better than certainly when they have been this season. Arsenal will probably be better. Liverpool obviously are getting better. And then if you look at like your Villas and people, and Newcastle is obviously the major worry. So it's like, well, how can you assume that just if you get yours right, you need everyone else to start winding down, basically?
Yeah.
Do you get to go to games often? Are you that local?
No, not really. No, just because there's just not the one. I don't really want to. I don't want to spend my money on this. Hang on. Sorry, I don't know if I froze. I know if you froze.
Yeah, I think you froze then.
Yeah,
I genuinely thought you'd left because you didn't like Will's question. I was like, this is brilliant. You can't make this up.
Sadly, no. But yeah, no, I don't really. Just because of one, the cost of it. Two, like especially going to Old Trafford, like you don't really know what you're gonna. Well, you kind of do not know what you're going to get this season as well. So it's kind of like, well, why would I go and fork out to go and watch them? And like, they're not the most available of tickets as well. And when they are, it's usually like, not the attractive games, should we say?
Yeah, and the atmosphere is pretty toxic there at the minute. The football's pretty poor. The ticket prices are still quite a lot, and the stadium, is almost falling apart as well. And you need a new one.
I think that's the thing. I think the main problem is you go to football to see goals, don't you? And we don't score any. So unless we play in Europe,
there's still a chance. Yeah, there's still a chance.
Unless you stick Harry Maguire up front, we're not scoring goals.
Look, we've done it with Mikel Merino, and it's worked out generally successfully so far. Why not try it?
So no, I don't. But there's a lot of reasons for that as well.
And I guess just from probably a final question from me, I guess, but if you had to have 3 or 5 signings for United, who would you sign to make them better? Don't just say anyone.
Yeah. Yeah, probably take some of the Southampton players at this rate.
God,
yeah,
that's desperate.
Yeah.
Don't know who specifically, but the positions we need to change are goalkeeper, without a doubt.
Yeah.
It's been 2 seasons and he's just not good enough. I think we need someone to replace Dallo, who is hot and cold. Yeah, centre of the park. Depending on what happens with Mainu, don't think he really knows where he wants him to play. Smirno's been doing well, but he's obviously getting on. I 100% need a striker. To be honest, I'd probably buy 5 strikers. So that's probably the way. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Why not?
I think that's probably Look, you can't pin it down to just one, can you? I think you could quite easily strip out the whole lot. I'd be quite interested to see what the team like when Ahmad comes back, whether we need another like person to go in that role behind the striker. And yeah, I think they just need to start. I think there needs to be a bit of forward planning as well, because eventually Bruno will go, and he's the only source of creativity that we've got. Yeah, I don't think it's just this season. I think it's I think we're in it for the long haul.
Yeah. Do you think, kind of sort of since you've been doing like the podcast with the different footballers, having different guests on, etc., that you've started to sort of listen, ask questions, and then started to see the different side of the game?
Yeah. So today we've had Les Ferdinand on, and we were talking to him about obviously the whole situation with Rashford and Ollie Watkins going to the boxing over the weekend. Obviously, after Villa got hammered, and I know like Rashford wasn't in the squad or anything, but he was like, yeah, it just wouldn't happen today. Like in his day, like if you lost, you stayed in the house, basically, even if you drew. Whereas now it's just like totally different. So I think even David has this as well. It's kind of like it's just a completely different world. Like the players today are just totally different to what they were like in his day as well, and just not I think they probably are more detached now. It'll be interesting to see when they start coming around and doing interviews and stuff like that, whether they've got any personality, because I don't think there is a lot of them that do.
No, I was going to say, like, I appreciate, back in, when David was playing and things like that, it was, football was totally different. But when you played football, it was, oh my God, I'm a footballer.
Yeah.
And, everyone idolised footballers because, you knew you were absolutely quality at football. You were playing for United, for Arsenals and things like that. But nowadays, because you've got 25,000 different youth teams, you've got 400 different competitions just in England and things like that. And obviously the money in the game has changed it. I suppose it's easier to be probably more detached, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, we did those interviews at West Ham. So we did one with Graham Potter, and then we did one last week with a couple of the players. But we were in and around the players' car park and stuff, and just looking at some of the cars, you were like, "This is mad! Like these kids are younger than me."
Yeah.
And it's like, they're like this. Imagine this being your first car. Like they were putting out in Lamborghinis and like worrying about being able to afford the insurance.
Yeah, it's not a bad life, is it?
No, but can you? Yeah,
it is a completely different world. Yeah. But I suppose footballers have always been in that different world. Obviously, you got all the sponsorship deals, and I guess it sadly all kind of comes back to money eventually, doesn't it? But it's that accessibility side. That you can be exposed to stuff. I guess, like, from my point of view, why not go to the boxing? Like, you're allowed to be a person outside of football. There is more to life than football now, I guess.
I think it's the perception, isn't it? I think that's the thing. I think particularly with someone like Rashford, who gets hammered for the perceived lack of effort, as well. If he's like, it's a little bit different, I think, isn't it? If like you've got to read the room, and I think because you are getting that much money, you got that much pressure. I think it's just part of it. I think you've got to accept that. And let's be honest, I mean, they'll be retired in a few years.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So, like, you've got plenty of time to go and enjoy and do these things, but for now.
Yeah, that's a really valid point. Yeah, I suppose I'm only just thinking it from, my side of where I am now. Like, if I had, hundreds of £1,000 a week, sit here and, do a podcast, like, for example. Yeah,
you'd still be doing a podcast.
100%, if that's making my money.
Not me. I think it's difficult to do it from a boat, isn't it?
But it'd be the same as your internet connection now, Callum. But no, I guess it is. Money does change things. I suppose if you're not from that, it's very hard to understand it from their perspective. I suppose same with anything. If you're not experiencing it firsthand, not that I'm defending footballers by any stretch. It's just an opinion, isn't it? It's just our perspectives. But if someone said to me, "Oh, you shouldn't be doing that because you made a mistake at work," for example, that led to a goal. Similarly, and I led to a bad hire, for example. I don't think I'd beat myself up and not go to the pub with Will on a Saturday night.
Mate, I've seen you in goal. You don't give a shit when it's your fault. You're just like, oh, well, someone else needs to score.
Someone needs to defend better, that's why.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess it's very difficult, really. But I suppose that's life. But it's interesting that it is that older generation that does sort of look at that and go, okay. But yeah, as you rightly said, what would Rashford say in 15 years?
Yeah, exactly.
Actually getting his feedback and his opinion on why he did these things.
Yeah,
why everyone did it. Really,
that's the other thing as well. Like they're not allowed to say much now, so you don't really know who they are. I mean, Marcus Rashford is a high profile, well, probably one of the most famous current players obviously in the world. But how many things from interviews can you ever hear of him saying?
Yeah, not much. Yeah, not much. It's like that Fulkrug interview last week.
Yeah,
I thought it was brilliant. It's so refreshing. He said, "Yeah, I'm fucking angry."
Yeah,
it's like I'm not disappointed. I'm angry. We shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah,
I think it's just so refreshing to hear it.
Yeah,
I think it's absolutely.
I've said this a lot about particularly around clubs in the UK. I mean, it's very much particularly when it's their own media, some of the club owned podcasts in particular are like propaganda.
Yeah.
You sit there and you're like, this is absolute nonsense. But then if you look at the American model, I don't know if either of you into American sports or anything like that, but their own club media can be, their own franchise media can be really open and will openly criticize the team and everything. Whereas you that would never happen here. So it just means that there's this whole facade around everything, but everyone's so overly protected and everything. Where I've been calling out for clubs and everything just to be a bit more honest. We know it's crap. Stop telling us it's all great. It's not.
Oh, absolutely. No, I completely agree. I think that's why podcasts like Seaman Says does so well. He has these open, honest conversations, and if Arsenal haven't done well, David does try to make it as positive as possible. But when it's been a really bad performance, you can hear him just go, "Oh, we were awful. We were so bad." And that's the way it should be. Honesty is the way. We've said it on our pod, haven't we? When we've had a bad game, we're like, no, it wasn't that bad. And we're just like, who are we trying to kid?
Yeah, regularly, especially this season, second half of the season.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I guess just looking at the time as well, so we don't want to keep you from the rest of your evening, Callum. But just want to say a massive thank you for all the support you've given us this season.
Yes.
Obviously, our podcast has gone from strength to strength, which is amazing. 2, thank you for your time today. It's really insightful. And for me, fanboying over David Seaman is always a bit of fun as well. So learning a bit more about him is always nice.
And what an upgrade for you going from Les Ferdinand to us two.
But no, guys, I hope you've enjoyed listening to that as well. Or if you watch us on YouTube as well, I hope you've really enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you very much and see you soon.
Thank you.